Hey guys, welcome back to the Mixtape Podcast, the podcast dedicated to discussing film from a writer's perspective. I'm your host for this time around. My name is Marcelo Inostroza, joined as always by my fellow co host, Dean Stark. And on today's program, we'll be talking about the 1996 film Mission Impossible. So, as I do every week, I will pass it over to Dean so she can take us through this film.
Mission Impossible was directed by Brian De Palma and it was written by David Koepp and Robert Town. And it's based on the TV series created by Bruce Geller. And if you don't know what Mission Impossible is, it is about this. An American agent under false suspicion of disloyalty must discover and expose the real spy. So, without further ado, we're going to get into the opening scene of this amazing movie. We are in Kiev and we open on a small TV screen that Emilio Estevez is watching of a man being interrogated. A woman lies dead on the bed, and Emilio is saying, come on, give us the name, give us the name. Eventually, the man in the room gives up the name. There's another man towering over him, like interrogating him, trying to get the name out of him. And once he gets the name, the interrogator injects him with a substance until he passes out. Then he opens the wall to where Emilio is sitting and then takes the mask off. And it's Tom Cruise. It's Ethan. And then we see the room that they were in was like a set, and the dead woman isn't dead, and she's revived by Ethan. So basically, it was an elaborate ruse to get information from the bad guy. They just set up this thing where, Ethan Hunt, Tom Cruise, pretended to be someone he wasn't to get a name out of a bad guy. I think it was pretty cool. Look, for someone that hadn't really seen this before, like if you're someone that hasn't seen this before, the opening scene was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. It was pretty ingenious. And I thought the setup was great because it gave you everything. You're like right in the spy movie. So thoughts?
I love the opening scene to this movie because it really, really gives you a solid idea of how the team works and how good they are at their job. This scene is so tension filled that by the time the mousetrap is revealed, like it's a brilliant way to bring in your audience.
Yes, yes. So next we meet Jim Phelps, and he's on an airplane, and a flight attendant comes up to him and she says, "Hello, Mr. Phelps. Would you like to watch a movie?" And at first he says no, and she kind of insists, and he looks at her like, okay, knows something's going on. So she offers him a movie. He puts it in, and he starts watching a video detailing his next mission, which is to go to Prague and to stop a rogue agent from stealing the CIA's knock list, which is a list that reveal the identities of all the undercover agents in Europe.
This scene is a great way to give the audience exposition in an interesting way and to not make it exposition heavy. And it really, really, really does a great job with introducing the audience to the main plot of this movie and what the team is going to have to do.
So now we're in Prague. And Jim has the whole team in front of him, and he explains to the team what their roles are and where to be to apprehend the rogue agent that's hunting for the knock list. But we need the buyer as well. All we need is photographic evidence of him and the buyer. That's it. Get in, get out. And if he tells them to abort, they are to stop the mission and abort. And of course, Ethan is the point man. Now, there's 5 team members. There's Sarah, Hannah, Jack, Claire, and Ethan, and they are all really close friends because in this scene, it's a short scene, but it sets up the camaraderie. It sets up they're playful with each other. They give each other shit. It sets up the connection between all of them because it's written so well that you only need this short 5-minute scene to know that they're a close-knit group. They all know each other inside and out. They've worked together before, as seen in the previous scene. But the connection is there. So when, the scenes that come after happen, you actually do feel it. And I think it's a testament to the screenwriting.
I echo everything that Dean just said there. This entire sequence, when you see the team get the briefing from Jim and you get to see how they interact with each other, how they love each other, and how playful they are to each other, that was a brilliant thing for David Kep to do because that endears these individuals to us. So when they eventually go on the mission that they're going to go on, what happens to them, that hits harder because we see how lovable and how much these people love each other and how much these people are just trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, but so the mission is to go to this fancy schmancy party and then go downstairs to the computer room and catch the guy getting the knock list. So that's the thing. But my favorite part of this scene is Jack, which is Emilio Estevez. He shows Ethan a stick of what looks like gum, and one side is green and the other is red. And he tells Ethan if he mashes the two together, it will create an explosion, which is so great because that sets up two scenes that are going to come, one right at the end and one a little bit later on. But I love that. I love that. The one thing, Marcelo, in this movie, because um, I've seen most of them, because you didn't make me. I wanted to, and I really like the Mission Impossible movies. The one thing is in this movie specifically, there's not a lot of gadgets. There's not. It's just the stick of gum, unless there's another gadget or like glasses that have cameras on them, but there's not a lot of like gadgets.
I think that the reason that there are not a lot of gadgets in this movie is by design.
Right. Okay. So what do you think about the gum?
I loved that scene so much that when I was a kid, I actually wanted a piece of that gum, and I was so disappointed that they didn't actually make that gum. I loved that scene because, like Dean said, that scene sets up a critical part in 2 sections of this film, and it's a great job um, by David Kep to drop a hat on the ground and pick it up not only once, but twice in this film.
Yes. Yes. So now we're at the party, and Jim can see everything. He's watching it on monitors because all the agents have cameras on them. So Jack, he's in the elevator shaft, and he has to upload the agent's files so they can enter certain places. So he's basically hacking into the system. Ethan and Sarah gain access to the elevator and enter the computer room, and they put a pair of glasses facing the computer which have camera on them because they need evidence. That's where the knock list is. That's where the rogue agent is going to get the knock list with, and they're going to get evidence via the glasses.
I really, really love the sequence when the team enters the party at the embassy. I love it because as the scene goes along, all of our agents are introduced in unique ways. Jack is stuck in an elevator shaft.
So Jack, still in the elevator shaft, sitting on top of the elevator, is suddenly locked out of the system when the elevator starts moving up rapidly. And Jim sees this, and Jim's like, "What are you doing?" Jack says, "I'm locked out of the system. I'm locked out of the system." And then we see Jack get squished. You're not expecting it. That's what I like. You're not expecting Emilio Estevez to die within the first like 5 minutes of the movie, and you're like, "What?" Jim says to abort. Ethan doesn't listen because he's like, "But he's right there. I can get him. I can follow him. He's right there." And Jim's like, "No, listen to me. Abort, abort, abort." And then decides to go after the agent. Now, Ethan has a camera on his wristwatch and sees Jim get shot. And he's like, "Oh no." And then Jim falls off the bridge. Ethan guns it. But by the time he gets to the bridge, he doesn't see Jim. He doesn't see anyone else on the bridge. He doesn't know what to do. And Claire, who is waiting in the car because we see Ethan walk past her, her car blows up. Ethan sees her car blow up, and it's like, okay. Now he doesn't know what to do. He's like, I don't know what to do here because he's kind of like he's trained for it, but he's not trained for it. Everything his team does well. So he doesn't quite understand what's going on. And then Ethan guns it and he finds Sarah who's been stabbed and he's like, "Oh no." And the rogue agent has also been stabbed. They're both dead. And then Ethan rushes to a phone and he calls someone called Kittredge, who is the IMF director, and he tells him what happened. And Kittredge says that um, sets up a location. I'm in Prague. Yeah, no, he says meet me here at the restaurant, and then Ethan says, "Wait, you're in Prague," which is highly unusual for the IMF director to be in Prague. But the one question I wanted to ask you, and I don't know if they say it, and I didn't look it up. These agents work for a faction of the government, I think. What does IMF stand for?
The Impossible Mission Force.
Oh, okay.
This whole sequence when Ethan's team starts dropping like flies is so tragic and is so captivating, but the reason why it works is because David Kep and his other fellow writers took the time to endear us to the team at the start. If they didn't take time to endear us to the team at the start, none of this shit would have been possible. I love how the music pushes the scene forward, and the music almost conveys to us how Ethan is feeling in the moment. And the music doesn't slow down until Ethan gets to the phone booth and calls Kittredge and tells him everything that just went down. I love the quick interaction that Kittredge has with Ethan over the phone. It alludes to us that Kittredge suspects Ethan of foul play.
Yeah, yeah. So Ethan ends up meeting Kittredge at a really cool restaurant with a really cool like fish tank in the background. It's really cool. And asks why there was another team there. And Kittredge says, "What are you talking about? There wasn't another team there." And then Ethan proceeds to point out the people that he noticed at the party that were agents, undercover agents, and a few people sitting in the restaurant that are undercover agents. Now, this is something normal people wouldn't notice, but Ethan is so good at his job that he picks up everything and he knows who's a civilian and who's an agent. And it doesn't even matter how good the agent is, he picks it up. And then Kittredge basically explains um, the mission they were on was actually to catch a mole within the IMF. Now, he starts talking about, um, you have to explain this better. Job
Okay.
314,
Job
Max, and
314.
Max, who is an arms dealer. So, explain a little bit about Job 314 and Max, the arms dealer.
Okay. The thing is that for several years, Kittredge and his other cronies at the IMF have been noticing massive blowbacks in IMF operations.
Mm.
And a couple months ago, prior to them setting up the sting operation, they noticed a black market check on the internet addressed to Job 314, and somehow they connected Job 314 to a leaker within the IMF.
Right, right. Okay.
That makes Kittredge believe that Ethan is the mole known as Job 314.
Yeah. So Kittredge tries to pin Ethan as being the IMF mole.
Yeah.
Uh, and Ethan, he doesn't come out and say it, but he skirts around it. And Ethan's so smart, he knows what he's getting at, and he's looking around him, and he knows he's in trouble because there are other agents there. And he goes, "Oh, I know why there are other agents here." So Ethan slowly pulls the gum out of his pocket and he mashes them together, and then he throws it at the fish tank behind him, causing an explosion and a really cool action scene where Tom Cruise jumps out of the window with like all this water flooding behind him. It's a really, really cool, it's a really cool shot. And he just guns it out of there. And now he's on the run. But it's a really cool scene. And this whole movie's setup is like 10 minutes. And you really like Ethan. You do. You're behind him, you know he's not the mole, you know he's a good guy, you know he's been set up, and now the movie focuses on who is trying to set him up, who is Job 314, and who the fuck is Max, and now Ethan's got to kind of uncover it.
The thing that I love most about the diner scene between Kittredge and Ethan is that the screenplay writer David Kep does a great job at showing us what Ethan's abilities are as an agent, right? Everything that Ethan does in the scene displays how his mind works. It's just a wonderful, wonderful scene, and the way that it's directed and the way that it is written is fantastic. In that moment when Ethan stands up and he throws the gum at the fish tank breaks, and Ethan goes running out. It's a fantastic moment.
So this scene, it's a bit complicated. I wrote down what I could,
Yeah,
but Marcel will have to jump in and help me. So
sure.
Ethan heads back to the safe house and tries to work out who Max is and what the hell he thinks at the moment it's Job 314, but Job 314 is. He doesn't know what any of this is. Claire shows up and Ethan instantly pulls a gun on her because he's like, "No, I saw your car blow up." And she said, "Look, I got out of the car and then it blew up. I didn't know where to go. I came here. We were supposed to meet here at 4 o'clock. I'm here." It takes her a minute to convince him, but then he's convinced because she's convincing. Um, Anyway, she says, "Look, I wanna help," because she was married to Jim, and Jim's dead. And she goes, "My husband is dead, everybody's dead, I wanna help. What can I do?" So, Ethan says the mole goes by the name of Job, and Ethan is going to get the real knock list because the knock list that the rogue agent got was a fake one, and he knows it was a fake one. So he's going to get the real knock list, and the reason why he's going to get the real knock list is to get Job to come to him because he has to find out who the mole is, and this is the best way to find out who the mole is. So this was this was a bit strange. Ethan is trying to email Job 314 using really random emails. Really, like he's for hours and hours and hours he's just making up emails until he gets a reply asking to meet. That's the only thing about this movie I thought was a bit thin because even the like at Outlook or at AOL, he's doing like at, you know, um Job 314. And I'm like, is that an at? I don't know. I just thought it was really thin to be just creating random emails and sending random messages out into the ether.
That's the only part of this movie that I'm like, yeah, I don't. David Kemp, Robert Town, Steven Zillian. I don't know what y'all were thinking there.
So the email reply that he gets is basically this is the meeting point for us. So Ethan goes to the meeting point and is they put a thing over him so he can't see. They put him in a car and they go to meet Max because Max is the arms dealer. So Max thinks Ethan is Job because she doesn't know who Job looks like until she realizes, oh, you're not him. And now Ethan tells her that the knock list that Job sold her is a fake and is equipped with a tracking device. And as soon as you boot that beauty up, it's just going to be people on your ass.
Mhm.
But he will get the real knock list for her. But he wants Job in return because Job is the mole. Again, she doesn't believe him. She's like, okay, so maybe this is just a ruse to not get me to boot up the knock list. And so he says, listen, if you boot it up, they will be here in 2 minutes. So she boots it up, and this. I love this movie, but she puts in a floppy disk. Not even a disk, a floppy disk, which is like holy shitballs. There's not a lot of information that can be put on a floppy disk, and you might be thinking, "Oh, you can put it in a zip file." Zip files do not exist in 1996. So whatever the knock list is on that floppy disk, I don't even know how big files can be on the floppy, but I'm like, holy fuck. Anyway, once I got past that, she boots up the floppy disk and we switch to kind of men storming the building, including Kittredge, but they're gone. So she did listen to Ethan and she did get out of the building in time. So I like that scene. What do you think?
Yeah, I really like that scene because it's a wonderful scene, and I really love how playful Ethan is. He plays Max to get what he wants. When the CIA guys show up, it's a great moment. I love the moment when Barnes, he's basically Kittredge's right hand man, says, put a guy at the airport. Let's put these guys here. Let's put these other guys here. And Kittredge goes, um, no matter where we put these, no matter how many guys we put in so many places, Ethan is going to get past these guys because we taught these guys how to be ghosts. I just love that scene.
Yeah, it's a good scene.
Yeah.
This scene's complicated too. So Ethan and Claire, they recruit two disavowed IMF agents. What's a disavowed IMF agent?
That's like somebody in the army getting a dishonorable discharge.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. So the two IMF agents he recruits are hacker Luther and pilot Franz. That's it. Franz is his first name. So he tells them he wants to break into the CIA headquarters and he needs their help. And they just look at him. They're like, "What?" Like, and then Ethan explains the task. Now, I had to write it down verbatim because there's no way I could explain what the fuck they're doing unless I wrote it down. So this is what they're doing. Thank you, Marcelo. All right. The terminal is in this okay, this is Ethan explaining what they're doing. The terminal is in a black vault lockdown. The only person allowed in the room has to pass through a series of security checks. The first is a voice print identification and a 6-digit access code. This only gets him into the outer room. Next, he has to pass a retinal scan. And finally, the intrusion countermeasures are only deactivated by a double electronic keycard.
Keycard.
Inside the vault, there are 3 systems operating. The first
Okay.
is sound sensitive. Anything above a whisper sets it off. The second detects any increase in temperature. The temperature is monitored by a vent 30 feet above the floor, which is guarded with lasers. The third system is on the floor and is pressure sensitive. A slight increase in weight will trigger the alarm. Sounds impossible. Well, you're in the right movie. But they have to get into that room to get to the computer to get the knock list, but they can't make a sound, they can't touch the floor, and they can't increase their body temperature. And they can't really go through the front door.
This scene is wonderful because it basically explains to the audience how difficult this task that Ethan is asking Luther and Krieger to be a part of. And I love it because as Ethan is explaining how the vault at the CIA works, you are actually seeing Brian De Palma does a great job of showing you what would happen if any of these security systems are broken.
So now we're at Langley, and Luther hacks Langley's system to turn on the fire alarm, basically allowing Ether, Claire, and Franz to get in the building because they're posing as firefighters, which is an ingenious idea. So they go up to the stairs where the fire alarm is going off. Claire breaks away from them and she goes into a closet area. She changes into like a work outfit, so she looks like an office worker. And she sits next to the guy who has the key card and spurts liquid into his coffee. And what's his name?
William Donlow.
William Donlow. She has to make sure he doesn't go into that room because that's the room he works in. So by putting that in his drink, that's going to make him extremely sick and unable to get into the room because we need Ethan to get into the room to get to the knock list. So Ethan makes his way with Franz through the air ducts. He disables the lasers above the vent, so he's directly above the room that he has to break into. And he puts a noise detecting watch on that shows basically sound levels. Franz slowly lowers Ethan into the vault via like a pulley system when the key card guy comes in because he's not sick yet. The key card guy comes in, but he's getting sick because he ends up like spewing in a bucket. And Fran pulls Ethan up, but not all the way. So Ethan, it's such a cool scene. Ethan is hanging there upside down, hoping the guy that's just come in won't look up. This is when the guy pukes in the bucket and then has to leave, and it's like, whew. So basically, when the guy leaves the room, so that when the guy uses the key card and goes through all that to go into the room, he can make as much noise as he wants because the room detects that this is the guy that actually works there. But anyone else that doesn't go in, that's not him. Um, pressure sensitive, temperature, sound, that all clicks in. So Ethan finally gets to the computer. He's hanging upside down in a pulley system. He downloads the knock list. But Franz is having trouble holding him up and then drops him to within like a fucking inch of the floor. Now we know the floor is pressure sensitive, so we're like, no, no. Fuck. The thing that I don't get, and I understand they did it for dramatic purposes, is that Ethan is on a pulley system. So the pulley system should bear a lot of Ethan's weight. So why is Franz having so much trouble holding Ethan up? Because when he pulls Ethan up, it's fairly quick. So I don't understand that.
The reason why Fran has so much trouble pulling Ethan up is because Fran is under stress when he's in the vault. He freaks out because of the rat. Fran isn't exactly on the level. So because Fran
Mm.
isn't exactly on the level, spoilers for what's about to come later, I think that's one of the main reasons why he drops him.
Oh, okay. Okay, okay. And interesting that a burly man like Franz is scared of a fucking rat. Like, come on.
The the other fascinating thing about the entire sequence with Ethan propelling down to the floor in the vault is this entire sequence is about 5 minutes. And in this entire sequence, barely no sound.
I'm with you. That this is my favorite scene because Brian De Palma made the best choice that I've ever seen any director make, and that's no sound. So the next scene, we're in London, and Ethan sees on the TV that his parents have been arrested on suspicion of drugs, and Ethan is like, "Fuck's sake," because he knows that Kittredge has fucking done it. So he calls Kittredge. He walks to the I think it's the London train station, and he calls Kittredge because he knows Kittredge has fucking done it. And Kittredge asks Ethan to come in, and he'll drop all the charges, but Ethan says no. And then they end up tracing him to London, but Ethan hangs up before they actually pinpoint his location. And Kittredge says, "Oh, he wanted me to know where he is," which is true. That Ethan knows exactly how long it takes for a trace and hangs up right before they pinpoint him. So they know that he's in London somewhere, but they don't know where. And then he turns around once he hangs up the phone and sees Jim. Jim is supposed to be dead. Jim fell off a fucking bridge, and Jim is standing right there. And Ethan is like, "Oh, what the fuck?" So, thoughts?
When Jim shows up after Ethan gets off the call with Kittredge, that that's the moment when I was watching this movie for the first time where I go, bullshit. How
Yeah.
how how did he live? So the second how is he alive? So the second that Jim shows up, I was like, wait a minute, something's not right here.
So, Jim and Ethan are sitting down, and Jim explains that he made it back to the safe house in Prague, but Ethan was already gone by the time he got there, and he tracked him to London. Now, Jim says the mole is Kittredge, and Ethan is like, "Oh my god, of course it's Kittredge. You're so because Kittredge is trying to make me to be the mole, so of course you're right." And he says, "That's who shot me. Kittredge shot me. He's trying to get me out of the way." So Ethan goes through the events of what happened. Now, when he goes through the events, we see what he's thinking. And he knows that Jim is the mole. He knows what happened. He knows how he did it. He knows everything. But he makes it look as though he suspects Kittredge because he doesn't want Jim to know that he suspects him. And he proceeds to tell Jim his entire plan. He's like, "We're going to go here. We're going to get Job. We're going to go on this train. We're going to get everything in great detail." He tells Jim again on purpose. And then we switch to Kittredge, who is arriving in London, and he opens a note with the time and place where Ethan will be. How does he have that? Well, Jim gave it to him, didn't he? Because Ethan gave the knowledge to Jim, Jim gave it to Kittredge, which Ethan knew would happen. Thoughts?
That scene of Ethan actually putting together in his head what is actually happening while Jim is giving him this fiction to make him believe that Kittredge is the mole that he's been looking for this whole entire time is absolutely fascinating. The only person that you don't know where their loyalties lie at this juncture in the movie, and folks, at this juncture in the movie, we're already in the third act, heading to the magnificent ending on this movie. But the only person that we don't know where their loyalties truly are is Claire.
But we will. We're on the train, and Ethan directs Max, via he calls her, to the disc that is under her seat. And she puts it in, and it is the real knock list. And she tells him where to find the money, which is in the baggage compartment. And we also see Kittredge. He's also on the train. Now Luther sits near Max, jamming the internet, so she can't. She knows the knock list is there, but you need the internet, and he's jamming the internet so she can't access it, and she doesn't know what's going on. Uh, Max calls Job, and she says that Ethan is in the baggage car. Oh no, she's double crossing him. Of course she is. So Claire's on the train. She reaches the baggage area and she sees Jim sitting there. And she says to him, "Is it a good idea to kill him? We can just take the money and Ethan takes the blame. We don't need to kill him." Because Claire likes Ethan. And so we know, oh no, Claire's no good. She's no good. But then Jim takes off his mask and it's actually Ethan. And that harkens back to the beginning of the movie because we know they can wear masks that look quite real. And she's like, "Oh shit." And then the real Jim walks out pointing a gun at Ethan, asking for the money. And Ethan basically hands it to Claire, and then pulls out his glasses, which were in his front pocket. Now we know those glasses record. So he's had them in his front pocket, recording everything, recording that Jim is the mole, everything that's happened, and he puts them on, and we know those glasses again. We know they record, and it's gone straight to Kittredge's watch, which is exactly what Ethan wanted. So thoughts?
The whole sequence on the train in the third act of this film is completely nail biting. From Max not being able to get the actual knock list in the actual open to Ethan pretending to be Jim to find out where Claire's true loyalties lie to the reveal of the actual mole to Kittredge, who's on who's in the train trying to find Ethan and his team. This whole sequence is absolutely like breathtaking, and not to mention what's about to happen.
Which is this? Jim climbs onto the roof of the train, trying to escape because he's like, "Oh no," because Ethan's like, "The jig is up, dude," and Jim's like, no, it's not." So he climbs to the top with help from Franz. Franz is flying the helicopter now. Jim is trying to get to the helicopter. Ethan follows him to the top of the train, and it's quite windy. It's quite windy at the top of the train, and he notices Jim trying to grab onto a rope that's dangling down from the helicopter. So Ethan reaches the rope and he hooks it onto the train and he tethers it to the train, and the train enters a tunnel. The helicopter enters the tunnel as well. It's a really cool action scene because the helicopter is attached to the train. Ethan jumps to the helicopter and grabs a stick of gum, mashing it together. We know where that is, where that's from, and sticks it to the window of the helicopter. Jim hangs off the helicopter, and we know exactly what it is, and it blows up. Blows up the helicopter, blows up Jim. The force actually pushes Ethan back onto the train. That's a simplification because that scene is about maybe like 10, 12 minutes. It's a really cool action scene, but that's pretty much what happened. Listen, where Ethan got the second stick of gum, I don't know, but you know what? It's a good scene.
Yeah, I really love how David Kep uses the stick of gum all the way back from the second scene of the movie to be a critical plot point in defeating the villain of this movie, Jim. But the moment that I love about the sequence is when the helicopter goes into the tunnel and you see the conductor talking to the engineer who is driving the train. And he keeps going faster, faster, faster because he keeps thinking that the helicopter is going to collide with the train.
Yeah.
It's just a really cool moment. And when the helicopter finally crashes, the blade of the helicopter almost takes Ethan's head off.
Yeah, it's really cool. There's a little small scene after this with Ethan and Luther, and they're having a beer. And basically, Ethan says, "I don't want anything kind of more to do with IMF. I'm going to go my own way." And it's a really cool connecting scene. I really like Luther because he's in all the other Mission Impossible movies, and I think rightly so because he's a really cool character. There's one more scene after this, which is Ethan is on a plane. He thinks it's going home when a flight attendant comes up to him and asks him, "Would you like to watch a movie?" This is the exact same thing that happened to Jim at the beginning of the movie. And Ethan says no. And she says, "Oh, how about this movie?" And Ethan knows exactly what's going, and you can see it on his face, like, oh god, like they're never going to let him out. I think he puts the movie on, or we don't see anything like that, and then we don't see the movie, and then the Mission Impossible theme starts, basically saying that his next mission is about to begin. So, and that's the end, and that was a really cool ending.
The sequence with Ethan and Luther at the bar in Seattle is just a cool calm down scene. And it really shows you that these two people work well together. And like Dean said, Luther, who is one of my favorite characters in the franchise, is the only other character that's in all the other Mission Impossible movies besides Ethan. It's a wonderful scene. And that moment that perfectly calls back to the beginning of the movie when Ethan is on the plane thinking he's going on vacation, but but unfortunately gets a tape from the IMF, basically begging him to come back is a wonderful way to end the movie.
Up this week, Marcelo is going to give you the trivia because he loves this movie.
Mhm.
So I'm going to throw it over to Marcelo. Marcelo, what do you got for me with the trivia?
Okay, so the first piece of trivia that I have for you guys is one of my favorite pieces of trivia about this movie. You guys can recall the scene where Ethan breaks into the CIA and he has to go into the vault to get the knock list. To film this difficult scene, they had to put they had to put Tom Cruise on a pulley system, and every time that Tom Cruise tried to spread out to give us that amazing shot, right? Where he almost falls to the floor and he almost sets everything off. He kept hitting his head in order to perfectly balance like an inch above the floor. He actually put quarters in his shoes.
To weigh him down?
Yeah, 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 to weigh him down so he wouldn't hit the floor.
Oh. Oh,
So
so he was top heavy.
yeah, 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 yeah. So it was top heavy.
Okay, okay. Oh, I didn't that's really cool. That's really
Yeah,
cool. Yeah, really cool.
yeah. My second, my second piece of trivia that I love about this movie is originally in the original script for this movie, the briefing scene at the beginning of the movie when the whole team is in the safe house and Jim gives everybody the details of the mission and sort of list out what every team member is responsible for during the mission wasn't initially there. Initially, the movie went from the team doing the mousetrap at the beginning of the movie to the team at the embassy.
Oh.
Yeah, and Brian De Palma ended up screening the film for one of his close friends, George Lucas. And George Lucas suggested that you have to have a scene where the team gets particulars about their mission, and you
Mm.
can use the scene to indeed to you can use the scene to endure your characters to the audience, because without that scene you don't know anything about them. You don't see their core. You don't see how much they love each other. You don't see their playfulness. You don't see how much they love working together.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great scene. We needed it, absolutely.
My next piece of trivia is during the initial development of this movie, the script by Robert Town wasn't satisfying Brian De Palma. Like everything that Robert Town was coming up with was not working.
Mm.
So Brian De Palma actually called one of his close friends, David Kemp, over the course of 3 weekends. David Kep and Brian De Palma locked themselves in a hotel room, smoking and eating popcorn, and they came up with the final draft of Mission Impossible, which is the version of this film that you see. But basically, what David Kep did is he took all versions of the script, versions written by Robert Town and Steven Zalian. He took his own version and he squished them all together.
I wonder what the original version was like.
Yeah, it was, I heard I've never actually read Robert Towns', version of Mission Impossible. My last piece of trivia, when this movie initially came out, several members of the Mission Impossible TV series went to go see it, and one member, um, went to go see it from the original cast of the TV show, and he was so appalled by what they did to the character Jim Phelps that he walked out.
Oh, whoa.
He couldn't stand that they made Jim Phelps a traitor.
Oh, okay. What was he in the original show?
He played a character by the name of his character's name was Barney Collier. He was the tech guy.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
And Jim Phelps in the original show, what was he
Jim
the
Phelps was the leader of the team.
Oh, no wonder he was pissed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I would
yeah,
be too.
yeah. Yeah, so that does it for trivia this week. Okay, guys. So with that being said, that'll bring an end to this week's edition of the Mixtape Podcast. But listen, guys, if you guys like what we have to say and you have questions or suggestions for us, we do have an email. It's the mixtapepod at AOL.com. So you can send us an email there to ask us questions or whatever you want. But for next week, we'll be talking about the film The Fourth Kind. With that being said, For my co host, Dean Stark, I shall simply say, as I often do, if someone is kind enough to make you a mixtape, that must truly mean that they love you.
The Mixtape Podcast is a Balloonhead Productions presentation.